of the Struggle by Paul Ortiz. I met Matt Sedillo at Occupy in, I guess, 2011 in Los Angeles when there was 500 tents on the lawn of City Hall, and there was a lot happening downtown, almost as much as what's happening right now. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit when I bring him in. And we're also just going to catch up, find out what he's been up to and what his plans are for the future. And we're also going to talk to him about this. Mowing Leaves of Grass. It's a volume of poetry by Matt, and it's amazing. I was hoping it was going to be good, but it's something really special and amazing. So, Matt, welcome. Thank you for taking the time and talking today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm not on this new platform. It's really kind of interesting to me. Looking at it right now, it's kind of, yeah, it's exciting.
HAPS, it's a trip, isn't it? I did HAPS the first time when I was live streaming the Caravan in 2018, and I was the worst live streamer, but it took me a couple months, but I figured it out on the Caravan with HAPS. Here's my first question. I just want to ask you. I want to ask you, what have you been up to, and what do people who have no context and don't know anything about you want to know about you, need to know about you, just to set it off?
Well, I mean, I'm a writer, mostly known as a poet, but that's just kind of because that was what was available to me over these past few years, and I've really kind of moved more towards. I'm still doing poetry, but like I'm open to all the different possibilities that they're now kind of opening up. Yeah, I'm open to the possibilities opening up. I don't know what else to say. I'm a poet and I'm a writer, and I'm one of the founding members of De La Jaguar. I'm also, getting ready to write a novel. So that's where things are right now.
That's an amazing place to be, isn't it? Ready to write a novel. You're also somebody who's got a big following, and part of it has to do with your work, and part of it has to do with your personality, I would guess. But there's a lot of people paying attention to you. There have been. You're a little bit of a force of nature. Again, I met you at Occupy. Hey, here's a question for you. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at, George Floyd uprisings and the BLM revolution and everything that's happened in the last, 7 months? And here in Los Angeles, where I am, but all over the world, of course, America had a global intervention for human rights violations when the police were murdering and are murdering people of color, Black people specifically in this country. And I'm looking at the kids in the street in the class of 2020 because I've been out there shooting so much. I've been live streaming and talking to them. And what I realized right away was that, first of all, this is not Occupy. Everybody's very kind of collected, aware, talking about policy, even though they're just out of high school, and focused in a different way. But I'm seeing that a lot of the ability to organize in this way successfully, some of it, a bunch of it came out of Occupy. Do you agree? Occupy opened the door for some of this?
Well, I think that Occupy, as well as like the Arab Spring, was really kind of something that I think that we saw, like the effect of social media as a means to like communicate, and a means to like organize, and a means to like get the word out that you're doing things. I think that there's a lot of that happened, but I wouldn't so much credit Occupy or Arab Spring. It's not that I wouldn't credit the people that did things. It's more like people learning how to use the tools that are available to them, and then doing that, in the same way that people, throughout history, when the printing press became available, people began to use the printing press. When people would learn how to be good speakers, they would do that. So I think that in many ways, it's kind of just these are rebellions that are rooted very much in the world they exist in, the time and space they exist in. So I think that if you can find similarities between the George Floyd uprisings and throughout the country, and Black Lives Matter in general over the past few years, or various other things, and you can find some similarities to Occupy, it's only because they happen within the relative same time period.
And I was also thinking here in Los Angeles in the same space, and tools is exactly what I was talking about. Like the toolkit was expanded and developed and refined a little bit there. Here's another question I want to ask you. what's your knowledge base? When I met you, I was like, oh, this guy, you're one of the people that, you know, you meet when you're organizing in these, you know, heightened political situations. And there's a lot of people around who have actually done a lot of research and are very well read. What's your main influence? What's your, you know, your knowledge base? What's your driving, most compelling influence?
Well, you know, it's a good question. I mean, like, I mean, early on, I would say that the reason I got politicized was because, you know, I was I've kind of bounced around a lot of the different various, you know, economic strata of this country. I mean, at times I've been up, I've been down, I've been in kind of in the middle. But at a particularly low point when I was living in Dallas, I found myself without a roof over my head. And I actually had a job and had a car, but I was kind of like not sure what to do, and I spent a lot of time drinking, spending time in the public library. And I remember thinking like, well, my whole life I've been told how smart I am, so I got to figure out like how did this happen to me? How did I fall so low? And so I ended up reading like all these books on political economy. I actually ended up reading. They actually had a copy of Das Kapital, so I started trying to break that open, and that was kind of like my kind of awakening towards the fact that like you know there was that was part of something larger than myself. That it wasn't just my own individual failure. There was the fact that like I could fall so far so fast because you know that I was somebody that just had my labor to sell to the highest or to the highest or lowest or to a bidder, and that was actually you know where I stood in this world. And so that actually ended up becoming something that how I kind of started. And then I decided that I was going to go to you know go organize my fellow workers at Lowe's, and I was reading a book that you had to be the hardest worker to earn their respect, and then after that they'd follow you, which was absolutely the opposite of what happened. I started working harder than everybody. I'm exhausted. I ended up getting exhausted myself, and it ended up being more like a scab kind of thing because then the management was more demanding of my fellow workers. So it was actually really horrible advice and a really horrible idea. But that's how I kind of got started down my road of political thinking. Although I am told a story that when I was very young, I think like 5, I was asked to make a paper mache ornament in class, and I knew that we had a lot of ornaments at the house. So I thought this was a waste of my time. And I said, this is a waste of my time to the teacher. And then they said, well, you know, you have to do it. And I said, no, this is a violation of my civil rights. And I threw myself on the ground and refused to make this paper mache thing. So I think that there might be something in me that's inherently, if not like a communist revolutionary, definitely a rebel of some sort. Because, you know, I don't want to say that I organized the classroom, you know, like, hey, we should not be making these paper mache things. It was very much an I thing. It's a violation of my civil rights. So a little bit like anarcho-libertarian thing going on there. But, you know, at very young, I knew I didn't want to do things I was told. I didn't taking them. So.
Right, you were defiant. You know, yeah, they say those are. I saw something a while ago about child development, and the children who are the most defiant are the ones who are least likely to get strung out as teenagers and have some other really negative behavior. So what is the ideology that's driving you? Do you identify that as a certain, you know, singular kind of linear thing or not?
I would say that if anything, I'm a kind of, I guess what would be described as a I mean, I would say I'm just like a historical materialist. I would say that I'm definitely, you know, I hesitate to say Marxist because, like, you know, there are things that, like, I mean, I would say Marxist just to say it, but, like, you know, if you ask me, you know, or Marxist-Leninist or something like that, if you were just to kind of like just for the sake of conversation, but if you want to get deeper into it, I mean, there are a lot of things that Marx said that I don't think are necessarily describe the world we live in, because, I mean, what I mean by that is not that it's not that's not to speak well of capitalists or capital. That's to say that, you know, like he was describing an industrial world that in many ways is kind of leaving the world scene. You know what I mean? In many ways, like a lot of the stuff on the point of production is now being automated, and it's now being you know, kind of pushed to the side. And certainly there's a lot of factory work still left in the world, but even in places like, you know, even places like Foxconn over in China are talking about automating. So this thing of this thing that he was describing, this world built around factories, in many ways kind of dissolving. Which doesn't mean he was wrong when he described it. It just means that the world changes. So I wouldn't exactly call myself a Marxist, but I would definitely call myself a historical materialist. I would definitely call myself somebody that looks at the world and tries to figure out how to root whatever we're talking about in the economy and the processes of how economies end up changing when the kind of technological base of production changes. So that's kind of the way I view the world, and I view any problem around the world through that lens. Now, what do I care most about? What am I most concerned with? Is a different question.
And that's exactly where I was going next. So what is essential? What's your, for lack of a better word, what's your mission? What's your intention? What is your, really, yeah, just that.
Well, over the past, you asked me before, I'm probably much more like, kind of proletarian, just kind of general kind of thing. When you and I met, right? But then, like, over the past, like, say 4 or 5 years, since Donald Trump came down an escalator and started talking about Mexico sending drug dealers and rapists, I became much more invested in, like, this kind of, like, Chicano, Mexicano kind of thing, because that's what happened. He starts saying things like that. My interests begin to kind of move in a different direction, and so I've gotten
really inspired. Donald Trump inspired you.
In a way,
inspired you to, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not that I was ever silent on these issues. It was not that I was ever quiet about these things. It was just like, it was not the point. That was not my point of my focus was wide ranging, right? And then my focus got more narrow when that happened, because not only did I see him saying that, I saw a lack of analysis around that. I saw him saying that, and then people talking about, well, this is the nation of immigrants, and my father came here from, County Cork, and he only had 2 dimes in his pockets, and this is un-American, and blah, 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 blah. And I saw all these people talking about these things, which, no offense to anyone or no whatever to anything, but like Ellis Island is not the Rio Grande. We're talking about 2 different histories. We're talking about a different world. In the same way that a napkin is not a salt shaker. Things are different things. A book is not a pen. I can go on and on and on. But one thing is not another thing. And so, like, this idea that we're not going to examine what this guy just said was really infuriating to me. So that really set me down a different kind of road that I had not really. I don't want to say it set me on a different road, but it set me.
Okay, we lost Matt for a second. I hope that he dropped, and I hope he's going to jump back in. I'm going to talk for a second. What he was talking about is really fascinating, because he's talking about, when the Trump administration came into power, actually before that, when Donald Trump came down the escalator and, started his campaign of race baiting and hate. Oh, great. Here we go. Matt.
I was going off. I was going off.
Well, welcome back. So, he did come down the elevator with all of his hateful race baiting, and it inspired, when I was using the word inspired, it inspired me to go, live stream the caravan. I think it inspired my friend Ada Trio, this photographer, to go meet La Bestia and come back, from Honduras, all that stuff. But you were saying? He came down the elevator, and
it just changed the point of emphasis. These were not questions I was ever silent on. These were not questions I was ever ignorant of. These were not questions where it was just the fact that there was that. Not only was that, there was a lack of analysis on this question. So people would begin to talk about this, and they would start talking about. They would immediately change the subject. They would immediately change the point of reference. So this guy's coming up an elevator talking about Mexico sending drug dealers and rapists. He makes a campaign about building a wall. He talks about Mexico paying for this wall. And these themes happen over and over and over and over again. And as they keep continuing happening, as these themes continue to be raised, there's not really an analysis of this that is allowed into kind of mainstream kind of news. And so, like, that became something of a point of emphasis. That became a real point of emphasis for me, because I thought, well, every time this happens, every time this guy's talking about Mexicans, you want to change the subject to, like, well, this is a nation of immigrants, and all of a sudden now we're in, like, American Tale, and you're telling me about Italians and Greeks and Armenians and so on and so forth. and you're not talking about what just happened and the history that it's rooted in. And like
the history that you're rooted in, are you talking about recent history and the destabilization of all these economies in Central America and South America and Latin America? Is that history, or I mean the current history, or what do you mean?
Well, sure. Let's take the history of Honduras, or take the history of El Salvador, or take the history of, like, why do you attack Mexicans in the United States of America, right? That has its own history. That has its own. There's a long history of lynchings in California, in Arizona, in Texas. There's a long history of how law was established in California, was established in Texas, was established in Arizona, on the basis of the extrajudicial murder of Mexicans, or of the legal killing of Mexicans. And there's a reason why you can say Mexicans are doing this and Mexicans are doing that and get elected in these places. Now, what made it kind of unique about Trump was it was a way to run for president. That was a little different. Normally, this is not a point. This is not something that plays big in Delaware. But that was kind of why I wanted to follow it. But this idea that you're going to talk about, that someone's going to say something about the Mexican border, and then you're going to shift the topic to a nation of immigrants, by which you mean we're going to start out to talk about, the 1800s and, groups of people coming in from Europe and Southern Europe and Eastern Europe and facing prejudice, means you're just changing the topic. You're changing the subject. That's no offense to anybody. And that's not to say these things didn't happen to people. That's not to say people didn't suffer. That's not to say any of those things. What is to say is that you are changing the subject. And also to change the subject to like Jim Crow is, again, you're changing the subject. You're moving this to something you're more familiar with, or to something that we're more familiar with when talking about the nation as a whole, as opposed to talking about the specific things. This guy said this. It has roots in this. And if you looked at the election of Donald Trump, it was very clear that he was taking the politics of Arizona and making them public, and making them national. It's just really obvious to me. Because look at the people. He had like Chris Kobach in there, right? Chris Kobach is somebody who helped design the law, SB 1070. And he had him as the leader of the transition team. He had him building up the transition. This is just obvious to me. This is obvious to anybody who spends time learning anything about this particular strand of U.S. history. But this particular strand of U.S. history is suppressed. This particular strand of U.S. history is not only ignored; it is suppressed. People refuse to look at this strand of American history. It's not that people don't really know; it's that they refuse it. In fact, they mangle it. In fact, they try to change it. They try to distort it. And so that became a real point of focus for me, because because one, I want the truth to be told, and two, it's something that I'm a part of, and three, it pertains to the struggle of everybody. This is and everyone should be learning about this history. If this is going to be a topic that's going to be something discussed, then we should root ourselves in the understanding of knowledge of where these politics are coming from, right? So you need to learn about Arizona. You need to learn about SB 1070. You need to learn about the book ban on Tucson. You need to learn about Prop 27 in California, and you need to learn about things earlier than that, like the Greaser Act in California, like the Texas Rangers. Like these things, it's not like a ton of information. It's just basic 101. So when someone says Mexico is sending drug users, rapists, someone says we got to deal with the Mexicans, and somebody's making this big thing, where the history of scapegoating and the oppression and the murder of Mexican people in the United States of America, where it comes from. It's not just something new, and it's not just something that when someone talks about, that you should immediately change the topic to Irish immigrants in the 1830s.
Yeah, it's also, I hear you, and there's in this part of Mexico, we call Southern California, we have our own version, and then as soon as you cross the border, there's another version of it, and it's their version of it, and it's, even from my perspective, a little more insidious. But I don't really want to talk about that. What I want to talk about is this. So here we are at this place, all these hideous, what was the first migration? What was the first Stephen Miller policy? Remain in Mexico, where everybody had to stay in Mexico. And then they followed up with safe third country. And they took all of these people who were maybe from Guatemala, but also probably from Honduras, from El Salvador, and just dumped everybody in Guatemala because that's the deal they made. And so here we are. Stephen Miller is about to leave the White House with Donald Trump. And now we've got Joe and Kamala, which is so very, very deeply disturbing to me, because I live in California and I'm very current on Kamala, and I've been on the Kamala ride for years now, as well as you. So I don't really see, I don't understand. I mean, I understand that the public profile of our border policy is going to shift. And I understand that it's also really not that different from the Obama administration. What happened, it was more hideous and hateful, and there was a campaign of hate and disinformation in mainstream media here and all over Spanish language, media vilifying people. So what do you see when you look into the future? What's going to happen? I'm in touch with so many people from the caravan from 2018, and almost all the unaccompanied minors got in while that whole shitstorm was happening with Trump and Stephen Miller. They all got in. Everybody didn't. There's a lot of people in a very bad place in Mexico right now who are trying to, who are looking for asylum. What do you see? What do you think is going to happen?
I mean, I think that maybe certain aspects of Trump's policy, and certainly the publicity for this wanton cruelty will definitely decrease. But if Biden's role in government is to tell us anything, it's not much is going to change. I mean, like if you look at like ICE begins with George W. Bush, and expands about 3,000 times under Barack Obama, administration, which Joe Biden was a huge part. So I think that the horrific policies of the Obama years will be extended into the Biden years.
Yeah, I think I don't really know how COVID's going to impact this, other than that they use as the Department of Homeland Security used it as an opportunity to just like draw a very hard, cold line. Nobody's coming in, and because like you, I've had my eyes on this for a long time. I also understand that this cruelty and these horrible things, I think you called it wanton cruelty, is actually like a death sentence. And it's actually human rights violation in the form of murder, killing, trafficking. These things are like actively promoting all of this. So I see more of the same, only worse. I think there's so many people stuck in Mexico right now, and the people still in Guatemala who got, thousands of people over. So I don't see anything good coming. All right, here's my next question. I want to ask you what you have coming. And I asked you a minute ago, what's your essential mission? Because you always seem like you're on a mission to me, right? Mission of poetry currently. And so there's something else that I'm wondering, I think you work somehow in academia. I'm guessing you're somehow exposed to a bunch of other academics or teachers and stuff. And so in terms of the class of 2020, they're here you are, you're just graduated into this, and now it's like what you're offered is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I don't know how they got young people to vote for them. I will never understand that, especially young people of color. So that happened. So in terms of your work, what you're doing, writing, workshops, whatever you're putting out there, what are you seeing as like, what does the class of 2020 teaching you, and what did they need to know?
Well, I mean, I think that for me, I can't. I have to put it like in context of myself and where when I was born. I was born in 1981, and so people tell I was not prepared for what was to come, because in many ways I'm just leaving this old kind of industrial economy. I'm born as this old world is dying, right? And I'm told at a very young age that I have to prepare for something different than the industrial economy, that I have to prepare for the service economy. And in the service economy, I'm destined to have many jobs, right? I'm destined to have, 3 or 4 different jobs. I got to prepare for not having one career, like my parents or some of this. But if you're born, let's say in the 1990, let's say 1993 or something like that, now you're being told that you got to start your own business. It's you're being told that it's beyond that. So it's gone from the service. It's gone from the industrial economy to the service economy. It's now like the hustle economy, the gig economy, as it's called. And what's to follow it will be like the scrounge economy or something. Even who knows? Because the thing we're not looking at like a crisis of overproduction. We're looking at a steep decline, because if people always talk about this comparison between the boomers and the millennials. and then I guess later the Zoomers. What they often leave out in this is Gen X, and Gen X does not live as well as the Boomers. And so this is what this really shows you, is that this is a decline. This is a decline that's not going to recover. And the reason it's a decline that's not going to recover is because you have a market system and you have a decaying industrial system, right? And so what Karl Marx described was a relationship between a worker and an owner, between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. But what's happening now is this whole thing is becoming like kind of uncoupled. So there's still a bourgeois, and then increasingly there is a vanishing proletariat, where you're going to vanish into kind of nothing. So you're going to have, what makes you proletariat is that you're going to have to sell your labor, you sell your labor power in order to live. But what makes this going to be difficult is because increasingly things are made by machines, and increasingly things are sold to you by machines. And so you got machines making machines with the machine cash register. So I mean, like, that is actually making it much more difficult, and it's going to become more and more difficult to survive into the future. And so the good news is that the solution hasn't changed at all. Solution is to seize the means of production. The bad news is if that does not happen and you do not do that, you're going to suffer a fate much worse than just general labor exploitation. I mean,
go ahead.
No, it's headed in one direction. I mean, just headed in one direction. So you asked me about the elections, and when I look at the elections, I mean, I see them just a manifestation of the general economic downturn. I see them all just manifestation of just Ronald Reagan. I mean, of just a manifestation. These are all just like Reagan presidencies, but Reagan himself is just a product of the world that he was born, the world in which the time in which he took power, right? I mean, I don't think of Ronald Reagan as any worse or crueler than Calvin Coolidge or Ronald Reagan.
Milton Friedman. Come on, I mean, Reagan was Friedman. You know what I mean?
All right.
That's
but even Friedman, right? Friedman, those things are not possible outside of the great, huge shifts that were taking place. I mean, if you look since the late 1970s, you have an explosion in credit debt, you have an explosion in prison population, you have an explosion in the amount of people who are homeless, you have an explosion in the cost of to go to college, and also outreach to people to go to college. So you have all these kinds of debt, prison, homelessness. All these things are rooted in the fact that that the economy of old, where you needed people to be around and do things, you had more jobs than people, right? That's gone, and it's not coming back. And because it's not coming back, all these weird manifestations where you have a derivative market that's 10 times the size of the gross world product, all that stuff becomes possible, but it's only possible because there's other things happening. And this thing that's happening over here is accelerating. So all these manifestations are going to appear and accelerate and continue to just destroy everything. I mean, this question of the fact that labor, the disappearance of labor, it's again, I'm an 80s kid, right? So it's like the never-ending story. It's like the nothing. It's going to eat everything. It's going to eat everything you've known. So what they need to know is that things are only going to get worse. And
is this end stage capitalism?
Yeah. The thing you took a late stage to end stage, and I don't know when end stage is. I mean, it took hundreds of years for capitalism to grow out of some weird stuff that was happening inside a feudal order. It took centuries for that to happen. Mm-hmm. This could take decades. I don't know. It's like third decade of happening. But whatever it was that began, it's beginning, and something that is not capitalism is growing out of capitalism, and it's much worse than capitalism.
Let's talk about housing for a second. In the Los Angeles County, and this is just my personal estimate, but I'm going to say that there's 250,000 people who are unhoused in Los Angeles County. The Lhasa number is 60,000 that everybody quotes. That's actually not what it says. It says 60,000 and times it by 3. If you actually, this is just mainstream journalism. It takes 3 seconds to read the Lhasa, what it says, because it's all on their homepage in big letters and bright colors with designs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it says take 60,000. It's a low estimate, times it by 3, but nobody does that. So The estimate is that there's 60,000 people homeless in New York. I'm going to guess there's 250,000. I've been watching it and writing about it since 2005. I got a good handle on it, talked to a lot of people. And I also am going to estimate in the next 6 months, there's going to be another 25,000. Look, I think there's about to be 300,000 people unhoused in Los Angeles. You said before that you were homeless in Dallas when you were younger. So that can be devastating to climb out of from a personal, all the little personal lives. They say the longer you're homeless, the longer it takes to get back in. So the potential that I see for you know what, so for, you know, the first world turning into the third world very fast. And of course, you know, not really, of course, but I see that happening in Los Angeles. I think 6 months from now, we're going to be like, it's going to be Mad Max. And it kind of is already, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is in many parts of it, and you know, but you know, we talk about this kind of idea of first world versus third world. I mean, you're talking about like, you know, like in other countries wherein resources are being pulled out of the ground, and like, you know, and multinational corporations are willing to kill you with impunity. I mean, that's what we're talking about there. But I mean, you know, in the United States, I mean, there's death squads everywhere. You know, there's the biggest prison state in the world, and I don't look at the police department as anything other than just, you know, essentially death squads. I mean, they have the right to kill you. So I mean, and, you know,
Pretty much.
pretty much. I mean, you know, they have the right to kill you with impunity, and you know, the numbers of people they kill per capita are pretty high in comparison to, you know, a lot of comparison to most of the world. I mean, not the highest. I mean, there are places where it's even worse, I suppose, but it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. It's a pretty bad place. And yeah, so we need to really take stock of the conditions we're living under, and it is the largest police state in the world. I mean, in terms of we want to define that by prisons and caging and stuff like that.
So much money to be made. What do you have coming up? What's going on? I know you do a lot of stuff. I see you all over the place. I know you do readings. And before we end, after I ask you this question, I'd like to ask you to read something.
Sure.
Hopefully from Mowing Leaves of Grass, and or whatever. But what do you have going on? What's the plan? What's coming up in the near future and in the long term, and just what's going on?
Well, what's going on is that, you know, I got a contract now, or I'm working to write a novel. It's gonna be set in the future, you know. And my novel writing, my prose is actually very different than poetry. The poetry, I mean, actually, it's kind of interesting. As a poet, I don't really use that many adjectives. It's kind of like kind of like listing things, right? But the art is really in the juxtaposition of things.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the novel, I mean, it's gonna be set in the future. It's gonna be about an election in the future, and in many ways, it's not about the things that the people at the time think are absurd and ridiculous. It's actually about the things that they find normal, and it's about the standards that they actually hold, you know. And in many ways, it's close enough to our world that it's kind of, you know, raising the question of like, this is not about what you find absurd. It's not about what you find fascist. This is about what you actually accept. This is what you find normal, right? So that's what really the book's looking to be about. Other than that, I got another book coming out.
Yes.
Called City on the Second Floor, and that's coming out. That one's done and should be out in early January or mid-January. So I got another book coming out next month, hopefully, maybe February. I don't know. We'll see. So that's pretty exciting. Still got this one selling really good. So selling really well for poetry, anyways. So,
congratulations on that. Congratulations on all of it. You know, like I said, I've been paying attention to you for quite a while, and I know there's a lot of people following you, journalists, academics, people paying attention to you. Why are they paying attention to you?
Well, why are they paying attention? I mean, I think that a lot of the journalists and academics, they really like my work because it's like very historically rooted. I mean, it's rooted in a lot of information, and it's kind of you know, in many ways, the poetry I write's not really like poetry. It's really like history. It's really like kind of explosions. It's kind of like little political speeches that are highly stylized. You know, it's not necessarily like, it's not written to be like, wow, look at that amazing simile, look at that amazing wordplay, or really illuminate. Like, I never looked at flowers that way before. I never knew a stream could whatever. I'm not trying to get you to slow down and smell the roses or anything. Not that there's not a place for that in life, but those aren't my aims. Those aren't my goals. And so the poetry, in many ways, is just like, it's just kind of like this explosion of information, and it's a lot of the information I'm dealing with, the same information they're dealing with. So I think that's why so many academics and journalists have really taken to it.
Matt, will you read something for us, please?
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you have any one in particular that you'd be interested in hearing, or?
No, I would like to have you choose it, but I want something from Mowing Leaves of Grass, if you don't
mind. Mowing Leaves of Grass, there you go. Okay, so this one's Pilgrim. Some are born in summer homes and palatial groves, for pain was only to unfold from the page of secret gardens thread from groves, but not I. See, I come from the stock of star-eyed astronauts who reach the night sky with big dreams and wide eyes, always running on the Devil's Highway through occupied America. All the way back to us on Mango Street, and also the books you must read. There's a handball off the back wall of a panaderia born east the river, post Mendez versus Westminster, one generation with red lines. And diplomas that were signed with those dreams. And that skin need not apply. See, I come from struggle. If my story offends you, as long as you made the mistake of seeking your reflection in my self-portrait, see this. What's that be about you? Because someone born in the Common Core. Reflected faces grace the pages of doctrines discovered and age to be explored. World hardships crash against new shores, New England, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York for others, pushed off Turtle Island. Aslan, do not call this brown skin immigrant. Child of the sun. Son of the conquest, man, you got no blood. One of the veins east side of Los Angeles. Do not tell him who native tongue the song will best be sung. Do not tell me who I am. Because I was raised like you. Miseducated in some of those very same schools off lessons and legends of honest Indians and Christian pilgrims and a nation of immigrants, all united in freedom. It isn't until he pulls out my white friend pointed directly at me and says, Scott, I judge you by the company you keep. You spend your time with this. That same old story, it's 1846. You drenched Uncle Sam the stick up, Manny Wetback. Show me your papers, I'll give me your labor, the melting pot. They're made for the hands that clean it. The American dream has always come at the expense of those who tucked in, and you'll know that. You don't teach it. Could write you a book, but you won't read it, so you know this is about you. In 1492, in the Treaty of Guadalupe, in California missions and Arizona schools, these racists raise their kids in cities that bear our names. You can learn some days from Ferdinand to Minuteman, from Arpaio to Alamo, so like in the Indian, as it lives in me from 1943 and try to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. Canadian minds, Leno strike the Plandealo, Zapata, Joaquimieta, Las Adelitas, Brown Berezi, Zapatistas, from Richard Nixon to Third Napoleon, from Peckinpah to Houston, from Lone Star Republic to Christopher Columbus, all the way down to Donald Trump. We didn't cross the borders crossed us. Who you calling immigrant, Pilgrim?
Thank you so much.
Thank
Matt,
you.
did you do that from memory, or are you reading that?
I did from memory.
That is impressive. Matt Sedillo, thank you so much. What's coming up, and where do people find you?
You can find me on I guess the best way would be like Instagram, I guess, because like you get a limitation on Facebook. But Twitter, I got a Twitter account now. I'm supposed to be promoting that. I only have like 150 or some people, but you know, whatever.
What's your Instagram handle?
It's backwards, so it's like at Sedillo Matt. So just look at Matt.
At Sedillo Matt, one word.
Yeah.
Sedillo Matt, MATT.
Yeah. I think the little line underneath, so it's at Sedillo -Matt.
At Sedillo _Matt?
Underscore, yeah, I think that's what it is.
Okay. So it's at Sedillo _Matt on Instagram. And who are you on? What's your handle on Twitter?
That's the handle on Twitter.
And on Twitter. Okay, great. Anywhere. And that was from Mowing Leaves of Grass. And that was amazing. And thank you for this. And thank you so much for taking the time. What's coming up that anybody needs to know about?
What's coming up that everyone needs to know about? I got the book. I got another book coming out pretty soon.
And then are you going to like perform or be on somebody's a Zoom or something like that? What should people watch for?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm just working on my novel. This is the last interview or anything I'm doing for a while.
Okay, that's more than enough then.
Right.
Hey, man, thank you again, and I'll catch up with you soon and find out what's going on. All right.
Talk soon.
Thanks, Matt.
Peace.
So there you go, everybody. That was Matt Sedillo. That was good. I've been trying to do that for a while and catch up with him and find out what he's doing. He's amazing. And he told you it's Matt. It's Sedillo _Matt at on Twitter and on Instagram. And that was great. I'll be back soon with somebody else and something else. And I'll talk to you later. Bye. Oh, yeah.